Welcome to this episode of the People Dividend Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Horne, and today we're going to dive into the future of leadership, but not just any ordinary topic on the future of leadership. This is on the future of leadership in a world that is defined by disruption. Whether we're talking about AI or climate change or other broad societal shifts, the challenges that leaders face today are, anything like we've seen before. So we have an expert today to help us with all of that. My guest today is Caroline Stokes, a leadership strategist for the fifth industrial revolution and author of the new book, Aftershock to 2030. It's a great title, A CEO's Guide to Reinvention in the Age of AI, Climate, and Societal Collapse. Caroline's work offers a radical roadmap for navigating disruption, grounded in trauma-aware systems, emotionally intelligent AI, and adaptive intelligence. So we have a lot to cover. Caroline, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it, Mike.
Your career is amazing. It's taken you from the launch of the PlayStation at Sony, where you contributed to that launch, to becoming a globally recognized authority on leadership reinvention. So, what's inspired you to focus on helping leaders navigate the complexities of the fifth industrial revolution? Just for those of us who aren't in the know, what is the fifth industrial revolution?
Thank you. Well, everybody would think that we're in the fourth industrial revolution, and we are, but we're tipping straight into the fifth industrial revolution right now. Ever since ChatGPT was known to be providing therapy, one of the top reasons why people use ChatGPT is for therapeutic use. So the fifth industrial revolution, it's emerging now. It's 2025 onwards. It's human machine collaboration, sustainability, ethics, and purpose-driven innovation. And you combine all of that, this is how we need to move in this world where we have planetary limits. We have the most global societal challenges right now, economic impacts. We've obviously moved in a situation where we had globalization in the 70s, 80s, 90s, accelerating, then social media and everything, and the internet took over our worlds and our brains and our habits. And now we're in a whole new paradigm, and how we evolve from that old paradigm into this new paradigm is, and you'll hear therapists talk about this, it's an inside job. We have to rework our minds on how we are able to adapt for all of these different environments right now.
So, it's about reworking our minds, having a new framework. And I'm so interested in what you talked about, human machine collaboration. I mean, clearly that's been around since the reinvention of the wheel, at least sometime.
Yeah, since the steam and water power in the first industrial revolution.
Yeah, right. Since we've figured that out. But what are some of the challenges? I know as a coach, mentor, and teacher,
Hmm.
in the classroom, I'm challenged by AI and what it means with my students, and how do we introduce more AI into the classroom without flagging people for papers that are created or crafted by AI? And yet, how do we develop critical thinking? I'm aware in the organizations to which I speak or where I consult, how challenged they've been about generative AI over the last 2.5 years or so. You're thinking about tackling some of these very big challenges that leaders face today. What's the spark that led you to write this book?
The book's always been there. I mean, it was 2019 when I did a TEDx talk in Brooklyn, and there was a big flood. On the day that we were supposed to do or the day before our talk, which meant that we had to move everything across and move it into this small room. And it was half the experience that I think most people would expect from a TEDx talk. But the point I'm trying to make is that there was a flood. It was an anomaly at the time, but now it's really common. And that's because of climate change. And at the time, my talk was about how we needed to develop emotionally intelligent organizations because of AI, and how we needed to become more curious about how to use it. And at that time, it was too early. There was no, let's use the term killer app, as they would say in the Valley, to help people understand that just how transformative it would be. But having worked in tech, since PlayStation, since before then, even trying to be a programmer when I was, not even 10 years old, I was in a situation where I was thinking, I can see where the future is going. I can see how it needs to be, how it will evolve, how the smart people will create these things. Will society be able to keep up? No. You just have to read Future Shock by Alvin Toffler to know that we've never been ready with the kind of transformative change. And he wrote his book in 1970, before I was born. So that's kind of why, because I could feel and see that we weren't going to be ready. And it was really after I had done my MIT course, working specifically on sustainability and really focusing about the environment, the society, and how we have to adapt organizations, and realizing that CEOs weren't going to do that executive education course. And I thought, okay, I need a TLDR book that, in 71,000 words, with the whole process for people to be able to see over those 21 chapters how they can adapt their mindset. Because, most people won't spend 40 hours a week doing an MIT certification program to create a solution, because it would just take up too much time. And it's like, well, they can listen to it on an audiobook for, some hours, or they can download the book on their Kindle or other digital device and get to that same outcome, but actually even further forward. So it really was just seeing all of these different scenarios, and the education that I undertook over many decades, the experiences, and so on and so forth. And actually, what really prompted me was because I have a list of 105 books at the back of my book, showing how the ignored pioneers from the 70s onwards, or the 60s onwards, on all of the different aspects that I touch on, were ignored, which has put us in the situation that we're in from a climate and AI and societal position. Here is the answer. I needed to have an answer there because I had questions. So most writers will do a deep dive on a topic and they'll provide one solution, but I really wanted to focus on the systems.
That's great. And, let's, given that amount of change and thinking about our capacity for change, thinking about organizations, clearly AI is transforming every aspect of work and leadership. And you talk about, and you just referenced, emotionally intelligent AI and adaptive intelligence. I mean, why are these so critical for leaders today?
Well, in a way, ChatGPT is emotionally intelligent for us right now. If you go to it and you provide it with a technology problem or a programming problem, it will help solve it. And it's going to be much faster than another human that maybe doesn't have that level of knowledge or insight or experience. So you're able to get that partnership approach right away. But something that relates to our emotions is that, if you're going to ChatGPT with a personal problem, or a problem with a colleague, or a strategic problem, and you're outlining what those issues are, you immediately get a very empathetic response, which from a mirror neuron perspective is very satisfying. We get these lovely chemicals in our brain that says we've just been heard, we've just been understood. And when people get irritated or angry with ChatGPT, I just use ChatGPT as an example rather than listing everything, but if people are agitated and irritated, it's because they feel that they haven't been heard. And that then means that we have to, and you mentioned critical thinking earlier, we have to develop our polymathic minds, our own emotionally intelligent minds, our own ability to assess how we've been approaching a prompt, to be able to understand, so we can actually adapt to create the right kind of response that we're looking for, that is going to move us forward. Not just the kind of response that would enable you to go, well, I feel satisfied now, I am right. And then people go into a crazy, it makes people become more challenging to deal with in the workplace, where they think they're right. Well, ChatGPT said I'm right. Well, no, you didn't ask enough questions to be able to really look at the entire system. So
You think about this concept of like work slop today.
AI slop, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, AI slop, again, it's critical thinking. So you mentioned earlier about the school system, or in the schools, you've got students all ages that are using, as well as workers using AI to get the result, and they're looking for fast, quick hits to submit that content, to submit that paper, that assignment, whatever it is, just get it done and hope for the best. What they don't realize is that teachers, professors, organizations, and super users are able to see that somebody is using AI, because there's typically a whole bunch of, there would just be so much content that shows that they haven't done that deep thinking. They haven't critiqued their own thinking or the responses, because AI, as people like to say, is a mirror, doesn't provide the rich kind of content and the arguments that you need to be able to provide. So AI slop, I can see it a mile off when I look at LinkedIn or I see, social media posts, and it turns me off so much. It damages a brand. It damages a person's personal, professional brand. And because they're doing it to just get stuff out instead of sitting, thinking, contemplating, and really challenging a lot of the content that maybe has been produced to be able to make sure that their content is right. And one of the things just yesterday, a friend of mine was explaining, her name is Julia Phelan, and she teaches further education, and she actually said something great, which is that learning is painful. It's so painful, and the thing is, it's good pain. And this is why I talk about neuroplasticity, is because when you have to tackle a problem and you can feel the brain hurting to create that outcome, when we outsource to AI, we're skipping all of that. We're not creating those neural networks and solutions to be able to talk to others in a really productive way. So that's why AI slop is out there. It's like a placeholder for somebody's content, or a response to education. And I don't like it. I think everybody can see through it. And I think we're going to be in a very different situation in 2026, let's say, in 12 months' time, where we're all going to have that radar, and we're going to start asking people or complaining outright in public, shaming people. That's my prediction in 2026, when people use it to say, come on, what do you really think? Walk me through this. How did you get to this result? I need to understand better, because this claim that you're making seems like a bit of a shortcut, and you're not walking somebody through that particular situation.
So true. And I was thinking about your comments around learning. There used to be a time when some people, or many people, would say, try and convince us that learning was fun. And in adults, we know that learning is anything but fun. It's usually filled with stress, anxiety, and some sort of disruption. And that's what makes change in adults so difficult. But one of the other concepts that I'm fascinated with are these trauma aware systems in leadership. Now, in the past on the podcast, we've had experts on organizational trauma. I mean, very interesting topics for all of us. But what's trauma aware systems in leadership, and why is that such a vital component of navigating disruption? And how do leaders start to build these kinds of systems?
Yeah, well, it's through, first of all, awareness and an acknowledgement that it exists. A lot of people will walk into an organization, they've just got their job, they're absolutely thrilled to join, and then they realize that they're unable to work in that kind of environment at the same level of productivity. They're unable to influence their ideas. They're just realizing that there is so much friction, and they're not trusted, and what have you. What people don't realize is that we all have our own internal operating systems on, and our values, and our own traumas. And it goes, any therapist, any psychologist will be able to provide tomes of data to say all of the different unique mindsets that people have at any time when they feel that they are under threat. And the system I use in the book was actually decoded after having EMDR therapy sessions some years ago, when I had experienced a trauma that had put me into a PTSD system. And it was the first time I had experienced or been informed of this thing called polyvagal theory, and how we should be in an optimal kind of growth mindset, open mindset, how our nervous system is able to be relaxed. We're relaxed, we're open to listening, we're open to discussion and debate, because we're feeling relaxed. The moment that we see or feel, let's use the term feel, that our values are under attack, or whatever it is, and sometimes we don't know that we even have those values and we haven't been able to articulate them, we go into any particular state, which is fight, flight, freeze, fawn. Now, the problem is that if our environment in our minds have been in that state for so long, especially since the pandemic, we don't know how to switch off, and we have burnout. So the US Surgeon General actually called, I think it was in 2022-ish, created this big workplace report to encourage organizations to understand that there are these different aspects of workplace, let's call it emotional intelligence, safety, psychological safety, to avoid the kind of burnout that is now a pandemic or endemic, I should say. And the issue is that we don't, when we go to work, whether or not as the leader, a CEO of an organization, or somebody that just joins an organization, or somebody that's been there for a long time, or, just doing their thing, they all dance to the same rhythm to ensure that they can survive. What if a CEO and the C-suite are aware that there are these micro operating systems all running in some kind of simulation in our own brains, that because we wake up in the morning, we will feel something in the morning. We may not want to go to work in the morning. We may overthink something. We may anticipate something. We may get stressed. Some people cry in the shower before they go into the office because of the kind of micro traumas or major traumas, capital T traumas, as some people call them, that prevent them from doing, I'm going to sound a bit cliche, doing their best work. So what if an organization was trauma aware, so they would be able to understand that they had some serious work to do before they even open their mouths, before they think strategically, and people could be aware of how they're showing up to ensure that they're able to become more open to communication without always having to go straight into or continuing with fight, flight, freeze form.
Oh, certainly interesting thing about Bion in that context. And, what I'm really thinking about, though, I mean, fundamentally, is the role of trust then. I've talked about it in one of my earlier books, Integrity by Design. Trust is really sort of the foundation for any exercise of authenticity in a social exchange. I mean, so what is the role of trust in navigating the challenges of the fifth industrial revolution? How can leaders foster it within their teams and organizations?
I'm actually going to steal something that a good friend of mine, her name is Dr. Gina Cox. She's also an author.
Yes.
And
She's just been on the podcast.
well, you know all about her then. So she recently said to me, because I had this very similar conversation with her, which was, hey, how do we get to trust? And she said, well, Caroline, you can't get to trust unless there is first respect. And that's part of the challenge right now. Our leaders globally, not in all companies, obviously, have been asking very challenging requests or demands, I should say, of their people with changes that are happening globally. All of the different systems are under stress. So if people aren't respecting either the external systems or the internal systems or the leadership systems, then it's very, very hard to build trust, because if you don't feel like there is trust, there is, if you can respect all of the decisions or all of the ways forward, and that you are going to be safe, then how can you trust the situation or the environment, and how can you actually make the right kind of decisions? So one of the ways that in my book I talk about how we can reset all of that by upskilling everybody to a new AI system. Now, the AI system is too premature. There are a lot of leadership or leading organizations that are leading the charge of this, like, for example, NVIDIA, Microsoft, all of the big, they're well-endowed organizations that really know how to invest in the right kind of technology internally as well as obviously externally, because they are so focused on advancing and the competing and what have you. So NVIDIA, for example, their new slogan, or relatively new slogan, is called Mission as Boss. So here it's not about hierarchy. It's not about listening to the boss. It's about what is the mission that we're trying to achieve. And you're going to have all of these micro and macro missions to achieve the kind of goals that need to be achieved. And they will bring the best brains into the project to ensure that it can be done, instead of somebody saying, well, I feel like I deserve this, or I need this to happen, otherwise I'm going to go somewhere else. It's ensuring that the right brains are not only they people self-optimize to ensure that they are able to put themselves in a position where they're able to be in the right role to produce the best kind of outcomes. So it's a whole new paradigm.
Yeah, I love that whole idea about mission as boss. It's certainly
Yeah.
something that we used to teach when there was conflict in organizations. Always get to focus on the higher purpose. And maybe that's a customer, where usually people have some agreement about producing revenues. But anyway, just before we begin to wrap up, I've got two questions. One is, first, where can my listeners learn more about your work, your book, and the frameworks you've developed? Where can they learn more about this? Where can they visit with you?
Well, they can go to theforward.co. They can also download my book. It's only available either on I can't even pronounce it, Audible, or it's available on you can download it as on Kindle or whatever your preferred device is. And the reason for choosing a digital only is to avoid cutting trees for an issue that I think is dear to all of us, which is to avoid catastrophic climate change.
Boy, yes, so true. I mean, and this has really just been such an enlightening conversation. All too short, Carolyn. But before we wrap up, here's the second question. What one piece of advice you'd give to leaders who want to start preparing for the future that's outlined in your book? Where's the starting point?
I would say the starting point is to really sit with yourself for a good 24 hours and work out what it is that you want to change in 12 months' time, and then start that path.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Caroline Stokes, for sharing your insights and your expertise with all of us today. And I want to continue to thank our listeners for tuning into the People Dividend podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, leave a review, share it with someone who could use a fresh perspective on leadership in the age of disruption. So once again, Caroline Stokes, thank you so much.
Thank you. It was a real pleasure to spend time with you.
And until the next episode of the People Dividend, stay well.